Welcome to Carpool for School.
Welcome to Carpool for School.
Now, this is episode number 2 of the Matt Hood series.
And today we're going to be looking and talking about how learning works. So if you can give us any tips and advice or your knowledge and expertise on that, that'll be tremendous, Matt.
Great, very happy to. So, I suppose the first thing to say is this area is contested and there's lots of different views and opinions. And so, I suppose the best I can do here is give you the theoretical framework and kind of my read of and my team's read of the literature as we see it. I think Dan Willingham says that for learning to happen, there has to be a change in long-term memory. The way that we think about this is through the lens of expertise. So we try to think about how does a human, let's start in the first instance, develop their expertise in a given domain over time. And I use the word domain really deliberately because I think sometimes in schools we get a bit bogged down in subjects, and subjects are domains, but there are other domains that you could develop expertise in as well. So if we have the objective here as becoming experts in things, the question is then, what is this expertise and how do we build it? So Peps, who's one of my colleagues way smarter than I am, talks about the work of Anders Ericsson in this space and mental models. And mental models is just a fancy term for what you know and how that stuff that you know is organised to guide your actions. So there's two components to that there. One is it's important to know things, and the more things you know in a particular domain, the better. And the second thing is you need that stuff to be really well organised, and the better organised it is around what we describe as the persistent problems that you face, the better able you are to tackle those challenges as they face you day to day. And I don't mean problems or challenges as these are all really bad things. I just mean the things that you have to do or make decisions about as a human day to day. We use this example of a restaurant, right? So you can walk into different types of restaurants, a McDonald's-y type of restaurant where there's some sort of self-service thing, or maybe a computer screen now if you're in a fancy McDonald's. There's the sort where you sort of queue at the counter with a tray and you get your stuff out of the thing and then along the tray you go. And then there's a sort where you sit down and someone comes and takes your order. And most humans have some expertise in solving the problem when you go into a restaurant of what you should do, how you should guide your action in that situation. And if you see the counter and you see the little digital screen and you see the menu behind the thing, you know that this is a McDonald's-y type of restaurant. And what you're doing is you're using your mental model to guide your action. You know all of those different scenarios and you've got a kind of adaptive expertise. And so it doesn't really matter if you go to McDonald's in France, you know what to do in that type of restaurant in France. And so we use this sort of this theoretical framework about expertise to think about building mental models. We think about building mental models, two things: one, developing knowledge, making sure you know stuff, making sure you know about all of those different places, and then helping to organise that knowledge around the persistent problems you face. That then leads us one step further back, which then basically means like, well, how do you do that, right? Like, how do you do section 1 and section 2 of what I've just spoken about? And I think there's broadly 3 chunks there. The first one, I would say we only know a little bit about at the moment, and we're thinking really hard about this at the moment, is motivation. So what we mean by motivation is how do you convince people to use their relatively limited cognitive resources, and how do you get them to direct it at a particular task? So that's really hard and something that schools have to think a lot about. The second one is direct instruction. So the most efficient way of building knowledge in other humans is largely to teach it to them. We broadly all agree that's true for 7-year-olds learning mathematics. I think it's true broadly when anybody's learning anything. And then the third thing that we use is deliberate practice. So we get people to practice the thing over and over again with really short, sharp, specific feedback. So getting people motivated using direct instruction and deliberate practice builds a combination of knowledge based around those persistent problems, which we think builds expertise. We think that process takes a really long time. We think it needs really careful curriculum sequencing, so thinking really carefully about what you know and are able to do and in what order you should learn it. We think it requires really careful assessment, formative and summative. We think it requires really thoughtful instruction, and crucially, we think it requires an environment in which that individual feels not only some basic things, safe, but also professionally respected, has good relationships with their peers, all of those sorts of things. So that is my best attempt in a nutshell of what I think about learning and the theoretical framework we at least use when we're trying to develop that in other humans.